You may have lost weight before. Maybe your waist got smaller. Maybe the number on the scale finally dropped, but there's something you can't see in the mirror, something no tape measure can reveal. Visceral fat, the deep hidden layer wrapped tightly around your liver, heart, pancreas, and intestines. And if you've ever wondered what really happens when this dangerous fat begins to break down, you're exactly where you need to be. Because visceral fat isn't just stored energy, it behaves like a secret endocrine organ, quietly releasing inflammatory signals, interfering with insulin, hijacking hunger cues, draining energy, and making fat loss feel endlessly frustrating. But when visceral fat starts to dissolve, your body doesn't simply get lighter. It begins rebuilding itself from the inside out. The liver becomes more efficient. The heart works with less resistance. The brain becomes sharper. The gut microbiome starts to regenerate, and hormones that once shouted over each other begin communicating clearly again. It's a silent biological reset. This video isn't just about fat loss. It's about what happens when your body is finally freed from a burden it was never meant to carry. If you care about real health, the hidden systems controlling your energy, emotions, and aging, tap subscribe now and stay with me. Because what's blocking your transformation may not be weak willpower, but a layer of fat you've never even seen. Most of us imagine fat burning as a brutal fight. Run harder, eat less, clench your stomach like you're negotiating with pain itself. But visceral fat doesn't disappear through force. Its breakdown begins quietly. No alarms, no fireworks. Instead, it starts with microscopic biochemical signals, like encrypted messages sent inside your cells while you're going about your day. When your body senses an energy shortage through fasting, extended gaps between meals, or burning through available glucose, it sends a discrete internal signal. That message is unmistakable. Unlock the deep reserves, and visceral fat responds first. Why visceral fat? Because it sits closest to command central, nestled near major organs and blood vessels, and highly sensitive to metabolic hormones like insulin, cortisol, and catecholamines. If your body were a city, visceral fat wouldn't live on the outskirts. It would be stationed in the capital, steps away from every major decision maker. Subcutaneous fat lives in the suburbs. Visceral fat lives where power flows. So when the signal arrives, visceral fat doesn't fade quietly. It acts. It begins releasing its stored energy, especially free fatty acids, directly into the bloodstream. But these molecules aren't just fuel. They're messages. Urgent memos delivered to the liver, muscles, heart, and pancreas. Attention, everyone. New strategy. Reduce sugar dependency. Fat fuel is now online. The single shift sets off a cascade. The liver starts upgrading how it processes energy. The pancreas adjusts insulin output. Muscles prepare to use fat instead of glucose. It's as if your entire metabolic government has been summoned to an emergency meeting, triggered by one event. Visceral fat flipping the switch. And while you may just be sitting there, maybe feeling a little hungry, maybe distracted by a passing thought, inside you, a quiet metabolic revolution is underway. This is why losing visceral fat doesn't just change how your waist looks. It changes how your organs function. Smoother, smarter, with fewer hormonal misfires. Your body targets visceral fat first, not because it's weak, but because it's dangerous when left unchecked and incredibly powerful when mobilized. Once it starts melting, you're not just burning fat. You're issuing a system-wide directive: operate cleaner, move faster, function better. And when visceral fat begins to dissolve, there's no cinematic explosion, no dramatic tremor, but deep inside, a high-level biological conflict is quietly unfolding. Hormones like cortisol, insulin, leptin, and adiponectin begin shifting roles, rewriting rules, easing tensions, and renegotiating balance after years of metabolic strain. And it all begins with one hormone in particular: cortisol, the stress signal that's been standing guard far too long. But once visceral fat begins to disappear, something remarkable happens beneath the surface. Chronic inflammation starts to cool, like extinguishing a fire that's been smoldering for years. Cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, finally eases its grip. Your nervous system steps out of constant alert mode, and the immune system gets room to recalibrate. You might not notice this shift immediately, but quietly, sleep improves. Fatigue lightens, emotional reactions soften, the body is no longer bracing for danger. Then there's insulin, the hormone responsible for managing blood sugar. As visceral fat shrinks, insulin sensitivity improves dramatically. Your cells no longer need to be shouted at to absorb glucose. A whisper becomes enough. Insulin resistance fades, blood sugar stabilizes, and the long-term risk of type 2 diabetes drops sharply. Interestingly, cravings begin to change as well. Sugar loses its grip, not because of discipline, but because the body is no longer desperate for quick energy. Next comes leptin, the hormone that tells your brain when you've had enough. When visceral fat is excessive, leptin signals are distorted, leaving the brain confused about satiety. But as visceral fat melts away, leptin regains clarity. The brain starts listening again. You feel full, naturally. Not stuffed, not restricted. The exhausting battle between hunger and willpower begins to fade. Yet the true front line of this transformation is the liver. The liver is the first organ to receive the flood of fatty acids released as visceral fat breaks down. If the body were a factory, the liver would be the main processing plant. At first, the workload increases, but instead of failing, the liver adapts. It upgrades. Fat-burning enzymes ramp up, especially those involved in fatty acid oxidation and ketone production. The liver begins processing fat faster, cleaner, and with far fewer inflammatory byproducts. As a result, liver enzymes decline. Fatty liver begins to reverse. And the liver gradually returns to its original role, not as a storage unit, but as a filtration and regulation hub. What unfolds feels like a hormonal restructuring. Chaos settles, signals sharpen, collaboration replaces confusion. The metabolism becomes flexible and resilient, no longer working against you but alongside you. After the initial shock of receiving an influx of fatty acids from melting visceral fat, the liver, often considered the command center of metabolism, doesn't collapse. It reorganizes. Quietly, it enters a phase of high-efficiency metabolic restructuring. One of the first major changes is an increase in fat oxidation capacity. Key enzymes such as CPT1, carnitine palmitoyl transferase 1, and HADH are upregulated. This allows the liver to shift away from glucose and toward fatty acids as its primary fuel source. Energy production becomes more efficient. Ketones are produced. And compared to glucose, this energy burns cleaner, generating fewer inflammatory byproducts. But the liver doesn't stop there. Its other responsibilities, detoxification, blood sugar regulation, and hormone processing, also improve. Estrogen, cortisol, testosterone. These hormones are processed more efficiently instead of circulating excessively. This may explain why many people report clearer skin, more emotional stability, and sharper mental focus during extended fasting periods. Hormones are no longer backed up in the system. A compelling study from Washington University in 2023 found that individuals practicing intermittent fasting for 8 weeks experienced an average 25% reduction in ALT liver enzyme levels. MRI scans confirmed measurable improvements in fatty liver conditions. When done safely, fasting doesn't damage the liver. It gives it space to heal. Another major shift occurs in systemic inflammation. As visceral fat breaks down, inflammatory cytokines such as TNF-alpha and IL-6 decline. This reduces inflammatory pressure throughout the body, especially on the liver, heart, and blood vessels. With less vascular inflammation, blood pressure becomes steadier. The heart works with less strain and delivers oxygen more efficiently. None of these changes come from starvation. They come from removing chronic metabolic overload. Fasting done correctly functions like internal maintenance, a deep reset that gives your organs the chance to operate as they were designed to. And visceral fat plays a central role in this story. It isn't just a storage depot. It's a chronic inflammatory hotspot. Imagine it as a low-burning flame inside the body, never dramatic, never obvious, but constant. Enough to damage tissues, enough to disrupt hormones, enough to keep the immune system irritated. Visceral fat cells continuously release inflammatory cytokines like TNF-alpha, IL-6, and resistin. These signals push the body into a prolonged state of internal conflict. And when inflammation becomes the default setting, every system suffers: cardiovascular, neurological, digestive. But here's the turning point. When visceral fat begins to break down, those inflammatory embers start to fade. Cytokine levels drop. Immune cells such as macrophages shift roles, moving from constant attack mode into repair mode. This sparks a cascade of healing. T cells recalibrate, inflammatory signals are dialed down. Damaged tissues finally get the conditions they need to recover. Less inflammation in blood vessels leads to smoother circulation. As systemic inflammation continues to fall, organs across the body begin to feel the relief. The liver, kidneys, and brain all benefit from the reduced immune strain. A study from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden found that just 104 days of intermittent fasting reduced C-reactive protein, SLAR-ERP, a major marker of systemic inflammation, by 30 to 40% in individuals carrying high levels of visceral fat. As this inflammatory pressure fades, many people notice subtle but meaningful changes. Skin becomes clearer, digestion feels smoother, mood stabilizes. That's because when the immune system is no longer consumed by low-grade internal fires, it can finally return to its true role, defending you from real threats instead of fighting imaginary ones. So losing visceral fat isn't just about appearing leaner. It's about freeing the body from a constant smoky haze that's been quietly damaging tissues from the inside. But visceral fat plays another hidden role. It's not just a fuel reserve, it's also a storage vault. Over time, the body locks away environmental toxins, heavy metals, pesticides, food additives, cosmetic chemicals, inside fat cells, particularly visceral fat. This isn't a mistake, it's a survival strategy. When toxins can't be eliminated immediately, the body isolates them for safety. But then fasting begins, visceral fat breaks down, and suddenly, that vault opens. Stored substances are released into circulation, and the liver, kidneys, and lymphatic system shift into high gear, working overtime to neutralize and eliminate what's been uncovered. During this phase, you may feel it. Temporary fatigue, mild brain fog, digestive discomfort, mood fluctuations. This isn't failure, it's cleanup. Your body isn't breaking down, it's clearing house at a cellular level. And like any major decluttering process, it can feel messy before it feels better. One of the most fascinating ripple effects of this internal cleanup happens in the gut. As inflammation drops and toxic load decreases, the digestive environment becomes less hostile and more supportive of beneficial bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. These microbes improve digestion, support immune balance, and even increase serotonin production. And this is where the transformation deepens. Through the gut-brain axis, improvements in gut health directly influence the brain. Less gut inflammation means fewer stress signals traveling upward. That translates to improved emotional stability, clearer thinking, and better sleep. This is why so many people report sharper focus, calmer moods, and deeper rest after extended fasting periods. It isn't placebo, it's biology. In essence, melting visceral fat doesn't just shrink your waistline, it triggers a chain reaction, detoxifying cells, restoring gut balance, and stabilizing mood and cognition. So if you feel slightly off early on, understand this, that discomfort is often the final stage of chaos leaving the system. Once inflammation is tamed, toxins are processed, and hormones regain balance, the body enters a new state. Scientists call it metabolic flexibility. This is the ability to shift seamlessly between glucose and fat as energy sources, one of the clearest indicators of long-term metabolic health. Imagine your body like a vehicle. If it could only run on one fuel, glucose, it would stall whenever supplies ran low. But with metabolic flexibility, the system becomes hybrid. It transitions smoothly between glucose, stored fat, both visceral and subcutaneous, and ketones, the clean-burning, long-lasting fuel produced by the liver. At the heart of this transformation are the mitochondria, your cellular power plants. Once sluggish and inefficient, the mitochondria begin to shift. They ramp up ATP production, the energy currency of your cells, while generating far less oxidative stress. The result? More sustained energy, sharper focus, less fatigue throughout the day, no sudden sugar crashes, no constant dependence on caffeine. But here's where the transformation deepens. When visceral fat breaks down, it clears the noise in your hormonal signaling. And once those signals become clear, your body can finally access subcutaneous fat, the fat just beneath the skin. This includes the stubborn areas around the belly, thighs, and arms. Before, hormones were sending mixed messages. Now, they're precise. Fat loss becomes efficient instead of chaotic. You start noticing real changes in the mirror, your appetite steadies, cravings lose their grip. Energy stretches longer into the day. This isn't just weight loss. It's a recalibration of how your body manages fuel. That's what makes visceral fat loss so powerful. It doesn't only change how you look, it rewires how your body functions, organ by organ, system by system. And the best part? This flexibility doesn't disappear. It becomes your new baseline. You're no longer trapped by sugar highs and crashes. Skipping a meal doesn't trigger panic. Your body adapts, stabilizes, and keeps moving forward. Because losing visceral fat isn't the finish line. It's the beginning of a smarter, more adaptable metabolism. Strangely enough, one of the first systems to celebrate this change is your gut microbiome. Picture your gut like a living ecosystem. There are beneficial bacteria, the flowers, harmful microbes, the weeds, and inflammation acts like a harsh climate. For years, visceral fat has been like relentless heat, drying the soil and allowing weeds to dominate. But as that fat dissolves, the environment shifts. Inflammation cools, the soil recovers. Beneficial bacteria like bifidobacterium and lactobacillus begin to thrive again. These microbes do far more than digest fiber. They help regulate immunity, they influence metabolism, and they play a major role in serotonin production, the neurotransmitter tied to mood, calmness, and sleep. As these bacteria multiply, the effects ripple outward. Digestion feels lighter, mood improves, the nervous system relaxes. This is the gut-brain axis at work. Your gut sends signals upward saying, "We're safe now," and the brain responds by dialing down stress and allowing deeper repair. Research from the University of California shows that nearly 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. Chronic inflammation driven by visceral fat suppresses that production. So when visceral fat fades, mental health often improves alongside physical health. Many people describe feeling lighter, not just in the body, but in the mind. Clearer thinking, better sleep, less irritability, not a placebo. A biological response to a healthier internal environment. Common issues like bloating, restlessness, and insomnia often improve as the gut regains balance. And here's the surprising part. You don't need expensive probiotics to make this happen. Create the right conditions, and your beneficial bacteria do the work for you. If visceral fat were a toxic roommate who refused to leave, its breakdown is like finally clearing the house. And the most relieved tenants? Your heart, your pancreas, your blood vessels. As visceral fat recedes, insulin resistance drops. Cells start responding to insulin again instead of ignoring it. Blood sugar stabilizes. The pancreas relaxes. The long-term risk of type 2 diabetes declines significantly. At the same time, cholesterol balance improves. Visceral fat disrupts the ratio of HDL to LDL cholesterol, encouraging plaque buildup in arteries. As it melts away, that imbalance corrects itself. The cardiovascular system breathes easier. According to data referenced by the American Heart Association, just a 10% reduction in visceral fat can lower the risk of heart disease and stroke by up to 30%. That isn't marketing hype, it's physiology. Blood pressure steadies, heart rhythms smooth out. Chest tightness eases. Because your heart no longer has to fight against fat wrapped tightly around every major artery. And the story doesn't stop there. In the end, losing visceral fat isn't about chasing a smaller number on the scale. It's about protecting the systems that keep you alive. Your heart, your liver, your brain, your metabolism. And the most surprising part? No medication is required. What your body needs most is space. Space to repair, recalibrate, and restore itself through smarter fasting, deeper sleep, and reduced stress. Visceral fat isn't just excess energy storage, it's a center of disruption. For years, it interferes with hormone signaling, scrambling communication between critical systems. When that fat begins to disappear, you don't just feel lighter, you feel clearer. Your endocrine system finally starts speaking the same language again. Take leptin, the hormone that signals fullness. When visceral fat dominates, leptin may be shouting, "We're full," but the brain can't hear it. The result is constant eating without satisfaction. As visceral fat shrinks, leptin resistance begins to reverse. The signal gets through. The brain listens. You naturally stop eating when you've had enough, without force or frustration. Then there's ghrelin, the hunger hormone. Previously, it spiked unpredictably, like a volatile stock chart. Sudden hunger, cravings out of nowhere. As visceral fat recedes, ghrelin stabilizes. Hunger becomes predictable instead of chaotic. Your eating rhythm settles into something calm and manageable. And then there's adiponectin, the quiet powerhouse hormone suppressed by visceral fat for years. It enhances fat burning, improves insulin sensitivity, and smooths out blood sugar swings. When adiponectin returns, metabolism becomes efficient again. Energy flows more smoothly. Blood sugar steadies. The body works with less friction. In short, as visceral fat retreats, your entire hormonal network begins to reharmonize. No more crossed wires, no more mixed signals, just a coordinated biological orchestra. And that coordination is the foundation of sustainable fat loss, without rebound, exhaustion, or constant stress. When visceral fat, the silent saboteur, is finally dismantled, something deeper happens. Your body shifts from survival mode into repair mode. This is no longer about burning calories. This is about rebuilding biology. Welcome to the next phase. With inflammation cooling and hormonal chaos fading, energy is redirected toward healing rather than damage control. Damaged cells are replaced. Autophagy, the body's internal cleanup system, continues sweeping away toxic proteins, misfolded structures, and leftover metabolic waste. Recent research shows that mitochondria, the tiny power plants inside your cells, begin working more efficiently, producing cleaner ATP energy with less oxidative stress. The effects ripple outward. Skin becomes clearer, muscles respond faster, the immune system becomes sharper and more precise. All signs of deep, silent transformation happening beneath the surface. Organs like the liver, pancreas, and kidneys, once overwhelmed by metabolic overload, shed their burden and begin operating with renewed accuracy. It's as if your entire system enters a long overdue maintenance cycle, fixing problems you didn't even realize existed. And the remarkable part? You didn't need a pill. You didn't need an invasive treatment. All you did was stop eating for a while, and your body, shaped by millions of years of evolution, activated its built-in self-repair systems. This isn't fantasy, it's science-backed biology. Quiet, efficient, natural. After visceral fat is reduced, cells are repaired and hormones reset. The most important change isn't visible in the mirror, it's internal. Your body is no longer programmed to store dangerous fat the way it once did. The autonomic nervous system, the balance between fight or flight and rest and digest, begins to stabilize. No longer trapped in artificial survival mode triggered by sugar spikes, chronic stress, and sleep deprivation, your internal signals become clearer and more trustworthy. Your biological set point, the energy balance your body naturally defends, starts to shift. Instead of hoarding visceral fat like a bunker for imagined threats, your body begins to trust its environment. Clean nutrition, stable blood sugar, lower stress. There's no longer a perceived need to build a toxic emergency reserve deep in the abdomen. The longer you sustain a healthy rhythm, real food, quality sleep, daily movement, emotional balance, the more your body locks in this new state. You're no longer fighting your biology. Your biology is finally working for you. Because visceral fat isn't just about belly size, it's a silent disruptor, fueling inflammation, hormonal confusion, cellular stress, emotional instability, and long-term disease risk. But the moment it starts to melt away, your body doesn't just lose fat. It transforms how it functions. The nervous system calms, hormones communicate clearly. The liver, gut, and brain synchronize. Energy stabilizes. Focus sharpens. Mood lifts. This isn't magic. This is biology, doing what it was always designed to do. And the truth is, your body has been waiting for this opportunity all along. If this video helped you understand how deeply your body wants to heal itself, support the channel by liking this video and subscribing. It genuinely helps us grow. And let me know in the comments, what surprised you most about visceral fat and how it affects the body? Because when you understand your biology, you don't have to fear it anymore. You can finally work with it instead of against it.